Hello, my name is Virgil and this is Literally Books. Today I want to talk about James Morrow's 2017 novel, The Asylum of Dr. Caligari. Now I've wanted to read something by James Morrow for quite some time and I still want to read a couple other things. So this was one I saw. It was very short, kind of like basically a novella. And I wanted to try it and it sounded really interesting. And I had just seen a few weeks ago, I just watched the movie The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari for the first time. And so this interested me. Read this book. Actually, it was great. Now, again, I've wanted to read Morrow for a long time. He's probably, or I would think, he's most known or maybe most recognized for this book, The Towing Jehovah. Now, I've not read Towing Jehovah, but I would like to at some point. And this was sort of an experiment to sort of see what I thought about Morrow's writing. And also, I just want to say, since I'm on the subject, that there's a quote in the back of this book from Michael Bishop about James Morrow, and it says, "In Iran, Morrow wouldn't last two sentences." And I just love that because he does sort of have this sort of satire or something to his writing that's great. And what can sometimes worry me, and I think it worries a lot of people who like these sort of science fiction and fantasy genres, is comedic writing seems to sometimes undercut the things about the fiction that we like. It's like it feels like it's mocking these things that we like, or it's like a very not a very interesting thing that it's doing. Like this is just sort of lazy work. In general, most of the comedic stuff that I've actually read has been good, but it has been from like the top tier guys like Pratchett and the other one, Pratchett and the other one, Terry Pratchett and My Good Hitchhiker's Guide. Anyways, it'll come to me at some point randomly in this video. I'll burst out and I'll say, "Huh," and then it'll be like, "Oh, there you got it." So I think that's something that a lot of us worry about. Sorry, there's like books all over the place right here. So if you see me fiddling with something right off camera, it's like me like talking and straightening a book. I don't know why. Because I'm supposed to do something with the book all. Anyhow, back to this. So it is kind of a concern, right? Like I don't really, for a long time I swore off anything comedic at all in regards to fiction that I like. And I've slowly sort of changed my mind about that. And Morrow, I think, is a really excellent example. We'll take this book, for example, as a case in point. His Asylum of Dr. Caligari is humorous, but that does not mean that it's not doing amazing work. The writing here is so damn good, and the ideas that come out are honestly just wonderful. So, what's the story about? The story is set in 1915. World War I has begun to start up, right? And our main character, whose name is Francis, is an art student, or he's an artist that's recently sort of come to Europe to hope to like make his big break, right? He sort of tries to get in with Picasso, and Picasso, embarrasses him completely, and he feels almost like he's never going to make it. But he makes some other friends. And I should say too that there's this great thing where he's like showing his art to other artists at the time, and some of them are pretty harsh, some of them are just trying to be nice, saying, "Well, everybody has to start somewhere," saying things like this to him. So he feels very disheartened. And a friend of his is going off, has obligations, so he has to go off to war. He has to go and fight or something like that. And he had an arrangement to go and work as an art therapy teacher at a mental asylum. And he needs someone to take his place because Dr. Caligari, who runs this asylum, is a vindictive person. He will not take no for an answer. Like he made this arrangement with him, so he has to find someone to take his place. Otherwise, there could be problems with Dr. Caligari later. And so Francis agrees to take this art therapy, it's going to pay great, which is crazy, right? It's going to pay great, and he'll have his meals taken care of and everything else. And he's like, "Well, I don't know much about it, but okay, because I got no other prospects." So he goes here. Some great things to talk about real quick with it was I think there's a quote, and of course I had to read a review to remind me what this quote was, but it's this little country that's supposed to exist between, like, I think it's Luxembourg and the German Empire, right? I think that is fictional or something like that. Anyway, this tiny little country, and that's where the Asylum of Dr. Caligari is. And it's said that the chief import of this country is what do we say? Is irrationality, and its chief export is rehabilitated lunatics, right? And there's lots of talk about Dr. Caligari being a sorcerer of some sort, and people like the people who have taken this position before, this art therapy thing, like coming out, and they're kind of like nuts, like trying to get out, and when they finally get out, there's something wrong with them. So it's with some trepidation that Francis goes to this asylum and begins to teach art. He meets Ilona, who I think dubs herself the Spider Queen, and she has an obsession. And there's some really, and Ilona has, I think, some of the best lines in the book where she's sort of, and I wish I had one ready, where it's all this sort of like play on words that she'll say the wrong word because English isn't her first language, I guess. It's just some great stuff. She's not arachnophobic. She's arachnoerotic or something like that. I can't remember. That's not right. But arachnophilic. That's it. And I thought it was just great. And it's like that the whole time. Alona is a very entertaining and wonderful character. There's such great interplay with these characters. Now, again, it sounds like, oh, this sounds funny and fun. Okay. So Dr. Caligari has this painting, and he's working on it. It's his masterpiece or something, right? He doesn't want anybody to see it. He even tells Francis, don't look at his painting's name is Ecstatic Wisdom. Don't look at it. Well, Francis and Ilona actually like makes a copy of the key that locks this painting up, and or something like that, or she steals the key, and her and Francis do sneak in and see the painting. Now, up to this point, I really enjoyed the writing, and I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was just going to be that kind of story, right? Until we get to see the painting, and then I realized, no, this is doing really, really interesting and creative work. I thought what the painting was, I had very low expectations, right? I thought, are you really going to be able to impress me with this? Yes, I was impressed. It was so good. I will spoil it at the end because I'll talk a little more and then I'll spoil it because I really do want to mention what it is. And I think that you can still enjoy the rest of the book and still be surprised about what happens later, even if I spoil this little bitty thing, which happens about a third of the way in. As I said, the writing is great. Some extremely great creativity. What we start off with sort of a historical fiction type stuff almost, right? That's humorous, and it moves into like magical realism or just straight fantasy. And it is good. The writing is good, and it is humorous, and it keeps you interested and engaged. Honestly, I've seen very few writers that can write humor this way. The closest person I can name is Avram Davidson. It's the closest person I can name to this writing style, where there's humor in there, but it's not like trying to constantly make these little jokes, right? These little make you go, ha, right? Trying to tell you like a da-dun type stuff, It's not like that. It's always these sort of anecdotal little statements or sort of the exasperation about something that works so well. It's such great writing, honestly. I mean, I think probably the closest comparison I have for Morrow is Davidson. I would say James Morrow's writing to some degree reminds me of Avram Davidson. It's that, I think it's that level of care put into his prose, and I also think that it's a similar amount of humor, but telling you a really interesting story while he's maybe making you sort of smile here and there. Highly recommend the book. Recommend the novella. Really, I think the audio version is about 5 or so hours. Really great stuff. Again, I thought that the ideas were just so good, and especially since once you discover that painting, the things that happen from there, I thought I had so much great fun with it. Such a fun read. High recommendations, right? If you enjoy good writing, I am absolutely locked in to reading Towing Jehovah at this point. I was raised Catholic, right? And obviously, when you're raised religious, right, or Christian, I suppose, right, there's a whole thing about something being blasphemous. And I was always worried about this book. Like, I shouldn't read it. It's blasphemous, right? I probably shouldn't read it, right? I've kind of moved away from that thinking a long time ago. Just really as became an adult and realized that, that's not really what's going on here. And it's good to critique the things that we hold dear anyhow. But I moved away from that. But I just think it's a funny anecdote that I had, like, this was the book, I shouldn't read this book. And then later on, I'm like, that seems weird. And then I just kind of held on to it. It was like, well, maybe I've already decided not to read it. Maybe I shouldn't. And that's a silly decision, but it could be a good thing because now I might have this thing to discover as an adult when I can really appreciate it for the first time. So anyhow, great stuff. I want to spoil that painting. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you can drop out. But I will say that having read the story, it is a bit of a spoiler, but I think this might be the thing that sells you on the book and gets you to read it. And in that case, I don't find it to be a spoiler. I find it to be the hook that gets you to read this because you need a hook. And the hook is this. They see this painting, right? And it's these troops marching off to war. And when they see it, Dr. Caligari, as we sort of said, is sort of a sorcerer. And he's done something to this paint. And they get filled with this sort of like ultra jingoistic patriotism, right? And that's like to an insane level. Like, like you just watched like the American flag, like flying an eagle soaring and, and jets from tanks. And it's like that kind of energy, right? Like a crazy thing, except that it's like chemically doing something to you. And they see this and they go nuts, right? Ilona and Francis do end up like a couple for, based somewhat on this event, and that's really interesting what happens with them. And what the doctor does is he has German troops, or troops at least, I think it's German troops, come in front of the painting to get them worked up to go to war. I thought that was just an amazing idea. Just such an interesting idea. And he sells this sort of like as a pass to come and look at this painting, Ecstatic Wisdom. And so then Ilona and Francis decide that this is not right? This horrible thing's happening in the war, and they have to do something. And so then they come up with a plan to do something about Ecstatic Wisdom. Totally worth your time. Not a long book. Go check it out. Go check out James Morrow. Looking forward to that book. He's got lots of other stuff. I sent Chris a book now, and then I'm now like, I should really look for that book again. But there's the other book of his that I really want to read that I probably don't have accessible. I've wanted to read it for years because I saw it. I originally wanted to read it because it had an amazing cover. And then it sounded really interesting. And then now that I like Morrow and doing a little more recent research in it, I really, really, really like it, is The Wine of Violence is one of his too. It's sort of like a science fiction-y parable story. So I want to say, like, look for that in the future. Yes, look for it in the future. I just don't know what type of future. I would probably read that before I'll read Towing Jehovah, but that's just what'll happen because I really want to read that one. It's just a book, like one of those things, like a book I've had forever and haven't read. So that's it. I don't have anything else. Like I said, I got tons of books in front of me. Tons. Like, well, I mean, not literally tons, like figuratively tons, right? Like tons of mental tons. That's it. Okay. Bye. Maybe. Bye.